Good evening and welcome. This is Bob Pace. I'm your host, and here we are. How to fight CPS and stop taking our children. How to fight CPS and stop taking our children. This is a live podcast from Southern California. You found me on Facebook, Fighting CPS, and I'm broadcasting on YouTube, and I'm using the StreamYard application. And it's a warm welcome because I know what you're doing is you're fighting a very difficult time because you're dealing with an agency called the Child Protection System. It's different names in different states, different names, but it's all about the Child Protection System. And it's really hard. Now, I've been through it myself, been fighting them for 15 years. And I too have suffered dearly on that. Now, a couple ways to interact with this podcast is one, just by being in the podcast, you can listen and you don't have to talk or text or anything and hear what I have to say. I do want to let the people know let me see here. I'm trying to get a hold of the people that are on my they don't get notification for about 8 minutes, and so I'm trying to re-scroot them in here. Okay, I've notified a couple of our regular room people that I am on live. And some things to keep in mind when interacting, besides just sitting in a room listening, is if you want to text in comments to me, I'd love to hear from you and try to answer your CPS question. So when typing in the comments your CPS question, please show your name, city, state, or country, and be complete with your CPS case. Now, I like to see where everybody's located, so that's why I ask for your city, state, or country. And I say country because we have so many of you now from about 13 countries now are visiting my website, and they too have CPS problems too. Now, recently I got South Africa called in, a province in there, and they didn't call in, I'm sorry, text in and told me about their issues there. I've also had from the continent of Africa, Mozambique on the east side across from Madagascar. They have been there. Also Rwanda, which is Central East Africa above South Africa to the west of Mozambique. And then a country up north, Liberia, has called in. The guy is Archie, and he has talked in this room. He's into scouting with boys and girls, and he wants to protect the kids. And so he listens to the show to see what we talk about. And then when I say complete with your CPS case, that means try to do it all at once so I don't have to keep asking and I end up playing ping pong ball with you. Try to identify your family structure. Is it, a husband, wife? Is it a partnership? Is boyfriend, girlfriend? Are you lovers? Are both parents involved with the children or just one parent is? And are the children from multiple parents? So the composition of your home, are the girls or boys, young or teenage? Then also I need to know why they took the children. Was it because of neglect or abuse, and little details of the neglect and abuse? Also, did you give away the children? They come to your home to take the children. Do you go to their office to take the children? Did you talk to them? Those are kind of important things I want to know. And then where you're at on your case, where you're at on your case. That's what I really would like to hear. Yay, Natalie, you made it. You got my message. Good. Thank you, Natalie. She's from West Hollywood. Now, besides texting, a third way is you can be a guest on my show. And that's great because then you could be beside me and we could talk together about cases, your case, and other cases. Now, to schedule as a guest, all you do is email our show producer. That's Grace. She works hard behind the scenes and she'll help you get on the show. Her email is grace@vincentwdavis.com. That's grace@vincentwdavis.com. And all you have to do is tell her I'm on 7 days a week, twice a day, morning or evening shows. I'm on at 10 o'clock in the morning, except Sunday I'm on at 8. Nighttime I'm on at 7 p.m. And I would love to have you as my guest. All you have to do is pick one of those 14 shows and tell her, and she'll do the rest. She'll get you the StreamYard application link and then what to do on the show, like no eating or smoking on the show, so forth. Remember, it's grace@vincentwdavis.com. We have another, Natalie's written several. Natalie, yes, you're from Westwood. I know you're from North Hollywood. And the police took your kids. I'm so sorry, Natalie. Judge Blackshaw so we got to be careful. We can't list names here. We don't want to list the names, Natalie. And she hid the ICPC because they wanted to put the kids from out of state. The ICPC is a private agency that transports kids from one state to another. And so that's what that means. Now, a fourth way that the interact with my podcast is that you're going to call into my show. That's my office number, 626-698-0990. That's all you have to do is call into that number. That's all you have to do. And so you call in at 626-698-0990. That connects me to my phone. I use Vonage, is what the company uses. So it's an internet-based phone number. So you can call in on that. Now, that is the 4 ways. One way is to listen. The second way is to type in comments. A third way is to be a guest. And the fourth way is to call in. And so far we have Natalie from Westwood, California. Actually, it's North Hollywood area. And I'm glad that she's in there. And Natalie says, the girls and my sons were supposed to be together out of state, but that didn't happen. Natalie's had a horrible story, and she's been trying to get her kids back. It's really sad. I know most of you probably have had horrible stories. But I care for you. I know what you're going through, but you have to understand this. CPS is very bad. If you don't want, some examples. My first example is in Prescott, Arizona. The Department of Child Services, DCS, had social workers, 8 of them. They're all females, white, and they all wore a pink T-shirt. Wearing pink T-shirt is not the problem. It's what they put stenciled on the T-shirt. On the front, they had professional child kidnappers. And on the back, they had, you know where your children are at. So with those 2 messages, they paraded around at Costco, Walmart, Target, other department stores, and really upset the community. They were caught, they were fired, and so was the CPS director, the DCS director. And that director and the 8 social workers were gone, and a lot of experience went with them, and down to one social worker, a guy who tried to hold down the fort there, because now we have nobody protecting our children from neglect and abuse. That's one example. Now, a second example is a social worker in Chicago, Illinois, this last month decided to put on her Facebook page. This is a social worker. She put an ad from 1848, and the ad said "Black children for sale." Now, that ad was 10 years before the Civil War and 140 years from today. So why would a Black social worker put an ad for Black children for sale? That's not right. That is not right. That's deplorable. And that social worker should be responsible for action. Another social worker was a man who's doing an investigation, and he came to the school to see a child, a young girl. Asked the school, "Can I see the girl?" And they went ahead and did so. And he asked to be alone with her in a room. When he got alone with her in a room, he asked her, "Take off your clothes," and he proceeded to take pictures of a 13-year-old child. He's a pedophile. And that's really sad. There are pedophiles that work in the CPS. The mother found out from the daughter and immediately called the CPS, and that person was fired. That person was fired. The mistake is you never go alone with a young child. You want to have 2 adults at all times. And on top of that, the school was bad for not alerting the mother and have the parents come to the school. They may not have to sit in there, but their parents are supposed to be called. Also, when you fill out the information card, there's only certain people they can see. And they violated that. And the mother tried to do something. She called the police and said they're not going to do anything. And then the social worker that was fired had a friend that worked as a social worker from his early years, and they did a retaliation against her and got the mother accused of molesting her son, who was in turn molesting her daughter. It became a big mess. I'm so glad to see you, Faith. Thank you for coming. Yeah, I had the most blessed day talking to you. That was such an unreal. Faye is a remarkable woman. She's from Richmond, Kentucky, and she knows a lot about CPS. She was brought up in foster care as a small child, ended up in foster care 5 times, and her mother abused her. And her mother's gone, but she later had a girl and a boy, and she had to choose because they investigated her, and they made charges that weren't real, that were not unfounded, and she had to say, should I take care of my boy with special needs or her young daughter? And so she chose the boy. They went ahead and adopted her girl into foster care. It was so bad. Natalie says, hi, Faye. Natalie further says, most blessed to be here with you all, Bob and Faye and parents. Thank you, Natalie. They're warm words, and I'm glad to have you all here. And again, the people that are listening, thank you for the emojis. I love the emojis, and thank you for being so supportive. Faye says, hi, Natalie. The reason why I read these comments is because I don't think either one of you see the comments of the other people. That's why I read them. And so there. So I've talked about how they react. I was starting to talk about the types of social workers. And that third one, the one that is a pedophile, that was really awful. But let me tell you about my own social worker. My own social worker in Orange County, California, strictly worked on bonuses and special payments to her. She was more interested at age 23 in her eyelashes, her makeup, her accessories, her clothing, and her BMW car, and her Gucci purse that she got a new one every week. than she was about my kids. She had no social work experience, no college degree, no license. See, in Richmond, Kentucky, the social workers have to be licensed and they have to have a college degree. In California, they don't have to be. And it's sad because these people are really rough on taking care of kids. When my social worker trafficked 3 of my 6 children uh, that weren't in imminent danger, it was stupid what they came up with. And it was all based on what my in-laws, the lay people that were reporting that my wife and I were doing something bad to our children. I had recently been laid off through no fault of my own in 2010, and for 5 years, I had to go through hell and a nightmare explaining to them that my children were fine. I showed them my house and everything else. But unfortunately, they kept after me and they got a police detective from the police station that ordered me to come home and they wanted to inspect my house to find something wrong. They couldn't. So they brought out the fire department, 5 firemen. They brought out 2 code enforcement, 3 social workers, and 2 uniformed policemen along with the detective. And those people tore my house apart to try to find something. And the only thing they came up with is recently my parents were dying and my daughter and I had brought their belongings to our house to sort and send out to family and friends. And of course, they had 55 years of marriage. So they had a lot of things they had, and their house was quite big. And what happened was in the living room, we had piled things like boxes stacked up and furniture stacked up there. And the children had nothing in their bedrooms, nothing upstairs. The eating area was free. The family room was free. The dining room was free. And it was sad. It was sad because they came up with a really thing and they took my kids from school. They weren't in imminent danger. So there's 4 scenarios of social workers. Oh, also my social worker, during the case, the in-laws, my wife's sister was trying to adopt her daughter. And during the cross-examine, my attorney, and I hired Mr. Vincent W. Davis, who produces this podcast. I'll talk to him in a moment. But he was cross-examining the social worker and asked, was there any domestic violence in the relationship? And the social worker says, no, it was fine. Beautiful parents. They're good to take care of children. Well, what happened is he pulled out reports after reports of domestic violence. So the social worker lied. They tried to deceive us and everything, and she was embarrassed. You know what she did? She retaliated by telling our daughter, who had 12 at the time, you divorce your parents, you change your name, you seal your birth certificate, and you get adopted by a foster care family. She did all those things. She wouldn't come up with that. And that was all retaliation. So those are the kinds of animals that you deal with social work. Faye would tell you how corrupt the police and the social workers are there in Richmond, Kentucky. Natalie would tell you about how the LA County social workers, and all they're doing is for money. That's what they're trying to make. In my case, in Orange County, they got $20,000 per child. That's $60,000 per month they got from the state. You know, child protection system by the federal government is an $80 billion business. They give the states money, who in turn give money to the counties. And there's no accountability of the money. In fact, in Richmond, Kentucky, there's over $900,000 unaccounted for. It's really bad everywhere. And it's not just, Kentucky or California. It is on the Rosebud Reservation in Rosebud, South Dakota. The Lakota Sioux, who are a proud Indian, who are now struggling to keep alive. There's only about 100,000 left of them that speak the language that are still alive today. And that's sad because the Native American Indians were our first immigrants and they were living here. And we took so much advantage of them. In fact, there's a thing called ICWA, the Indian Welfare Child Act of 1978, which protects Native Indian children. If your children or you are registered with a tribe, and there's 547 federal tribes recognized by the government, then they have to turn the children over to the Indian tribe, who in turn turns it to an Indian family, and they do a better care of family reunification and helping out the children and the parents. They take care of their own, and it's really, really, really sad. Also, if you could be registered, they have to make attempts to register the child too. So that's something to remember, the ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act. And I have lots of things like that I can tell you throughout the show here. Now, I would like to tell you, um, let me see here, about Vincent Davis. I did talk to him, and before I do, Natalie was saying, good, Faye. And Natalie further said, my social worker lied, said that my monitor, the FBI island, was a liar. I guess she had an FBI agent. She said she said it's okay for a visit. Then she changed the story. I'm so sorry, Natalie. That is really sad there. Wow. I'm trying to tell you that. Anyway, going back to Mr. Davis, if you really should get an attorney. Attorney is presented to you if you can't afford one, but it's a court-appointed attorney. The disadvantages are, and I don't tell you not to use them, is that you can't speak in court. You're in California. You're sent to stay in the halls, and that court-appointed attorney. But the problem also, the court-appointed attorney has a caseload of 30 or more clients. So he won't have time for you. He won't fight for your case. He'll look for the easy way out. So a court-appointed attorney is not going to help you. And Dean Pro say you can try that, but they're going to eat you alive. And the reason why I'm saying that, it's like open heart surgery is how it is dealing with CPS. If you know an open heart surgery, a professional doctor goes into your cavity and works on your heart. They are trained in medicine. They go to medical school. They have an internship. They get a license, and they do a mentor with a doctor before they start doing open heart surgery. This is how CPS is. And I have a guy who sponsors this podcast, Mr. Vincent W. Davis, that has over 35 years experience fighting CPS and getting children back. He is a trial attorney, and he is in the area of juvenile family dependency law. That is the law that you're dealing with, dependency. It's juvenile family dependency law. And so he is offering a consultation for 30 minutes for $60. All you do is call in the number 888-888-6582. That is the office. And what you do is you call in and tell them that Bob Pace sent you and you want to schedule a consultation. It's $60 for 30 minutes. $60 for 30 minutes. And that is what you want to do. Okay. I'm missing the ticket. I don't have the ticket there. Okay, there's a ticket running across the screen that will help you too with getting an attorney. If you want to see Vincent's schedule, all you do is type in Candly, CALENDLY.com/law office VWD/Bob Pace. It's a ticket running across the bottom of my screen. You type in Candly.com/law office VWD/Bob Pace. So either call in or check out his schedule, and he will gladly help you. Now, Vincent, by the way, works in all the states. He's even sued CPS civilly. He's done lawsuits at the state level and at the federal level. He's won millions of dollars. So he knows how to fight CPS. He's one of the best in the country. He works in Northern California and all the 50 states. And you can retain him. You just need to talk about his travel fees and how long your case been going on and the complexity of your case. So he'll give you a nice fair price. That's another thing. when you have the consultation with Mr. Davis. Now, I have about 10 minutes left of the show. Actually, it's about 9 minutes. So, does anybody have anything special they'd like to bring up or talk about? Faye, Natalie, or anybody else that's listening in this room? Is there something you'd like to see me talk about, or do you want me to talk about the three other rules? I just talked about rule number one about hiring an attorney, but I have the three rules that I can talk about too, or I could talk about some of the topics like the 388 motion or the JV 180, or there's lots of things. Faye has a lot of things she can talk about. Natalie has a lot of things too. So I have about 8 minutes left, and I'd love. I have to be over by 8 o'clock. I'm looking at the time now. I hope I have the right time. It's 18:52. I got confused on the time. I started soon. I still have another hour left here. Wow. Boy, did I mess up. I thought it was 7. I thought it was, wait a minute. Yeah, it's going to start. Oh, wow. Boy, did I mess up tonight. I apologize. But you got me now for another hour. We could talk about a lot of things here. I see the clock. It says 6:52. I don't start to 7 o'clock. And somehow I started my podcast. What time did I start my podcast at? I started my podcast at 6:30. Okay, well, that was a pleasant surprise. I thought I was running late, and I rushed to get in there, and I guess I read the time wrong on that. So, yeah, a 3-8, Natalie says, filing a 3-8 motion 3-8 is to make a motion to have the judge have a hearing to change your visits, to enter something new. And that's in California. In other states, it may not be called that, but it's a motion to have a hearing, and the judge must grant it in 30 days. Now, Natalie says her judge didn't give me unmonitored visits. Okay, he didn't. Wow. Now, Faye says the rules. Well, we got time for that too, because I just talked about rule number one. Now, rule number two is to organize your paperwork. It's very important that you organize your paperwork in one way that may work for you that I never did, that I did. Oh, wow. Faye had the same problem Natalie had, and they never gave her unmonitored visits in her 4 years. Wow, what a remarkable woman both you women are. Well, organize your paperwork. I find that if you use a notebook with 3 rings, it's a binder, and you can poke holes in your documents. Also, all your documents need to be pretty much the same size. I was mistakenly writing them on envelopes and post-it notes and everything. And so I made the mistake, and wow. Yeah, Natalie's judge was unfit. My judge was so bad, all he knew about was how to do damage claims in car accidents. He knew nothing about children or family or reunification. So I had a terrible judge. Judges are voted in. This is election year, so in November you need to elect a judge that would be qualified. So it's very important that we pick our right judges. Okay, Faye says you should keep 2 forms. What forms are you talking about, Faye? In case you lose one. What forms are you talking about? Governor Brown appointed your judge? I was told that they're elected judges. I can't believe Governor Brown would appoint a child dependency judge. I thought they were elected. Vincent Davis had told me that. Faye, I did miss a comment, and I'm trying to find out. I record everything on my cell phone. Yes, I did. And keep notes in my phone, but my phone got stolen. Yeah, I have a phone and I have a calendar and I write things all the time in there, but you're right. My phone is uploaded though and it's protected so I can retrieve anything that gets if I lose my phone. But I also had a day runner. And the day runner is good, but you have to write so small and I can't read as I got later in life for me. I'm a dinosaur now. And so I need to have it big and so I can read it. And so I find out that if you have a notebook and you have subject dividers, and your subject dividers are listed, and you organize your paperwork. One subject divider could be incidents, and you know that you're going to have hundreds of incidents, police incidents, children's incidents, social workers incidents. You want to record that. It's so important because you'll need that later in your case. Your case is not going to get done in 48 hours, or it's not going to get done shortly. It's going to take an average of 3 or more years. Some of these parents have been fighting for 6 or 7 years. So, yeah, I got to slow down, Faye. I was concentrating, think I had the wrong time. Oh, Natalie says she filled a vacant position. Okay. Now she's rotating around the court. She doesn't have her courtroom. Okay. Well, check to make sure if they're voted in or anything. I gotta be careful of my window that you guys can see me. So with this paperwork, you have instance. Try the okay. You want to list the date, the time, the location, and the people involved in the incident. Then the next line, you want to write what the incident was about. The third line is the conclusion of the incident. If you don't know it, you can come back and fill it in later, leave some room. But every incident, you want to skip a couple lines because you may want to come back and put notes or comments. Inside of a couple months, you have hundreds of incidents and you can't remember them all. I didn't, and I wish I'd done that. I believe you, Natalie. I don't need to check. I know that maybe LA County. I'm talking about Orange County, that the judges are elected and not appointed. So that's where I'm talking about there. So right now it's 7 o'clock and my show just started officially. I've been talking for 34 minutes and 15 seconds early because I was confused on the time. I was confused on the time. Boy, was I confused. But anyway, I'm glad to have this time because now we can spend the next hour and take a lot of phone calls and a lot of questions. Now, furthermore, on this paperwork, you want to also put in there all the programs that you've done, like anger management, domestic violence. You make a log of all of them, the first page, and then you put down certificates behind them. Also, you want to do the same thing with parent parent classes. You want to make a log of all the parenting classes and put the certifications behind it, punch the holes. You can have one for your drug tests, punch the holes. You can have one for the court papers. And, you can arrange them by the date that you receive them or when they were issued. And you can have the court papers. Anyway, this notebook will be good. My pile was 2 feet thick. So I'd really need a couple notebooks there. And yes. So paperwork is important. Try to use a highlighter if you can. Now, I want to welcome everybody who came here on the right time at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And my podcast's been running for a little bit. You've missed a few things, but I'm glad that you still come in here. And now we'll probably have more people in this room. We'll probably make some phone calls, I hope. In there. I'm going to let my show producer know what I did because she's kind of confused too. So, okay. I just told my show producer that I'm live still, and we'll end before 8. We have another podcast with Mrs. G at 8 o'clock, and so the way that this application works, you can only have one podcast at a time. You can't have several going at a time. Well, I imagine you could, but I think it's probably more money for the application. But anyway, I'm really glad to suddenly feel relaxed now and take my time and try to do a thorough job of this podcast. So we just talked about the notebook and stuffing it full of things in there. I mean, use college rule notebook paper, stuff it full of that, and then organize everything. I had everything on post-it notes, envelopes, small pieces of paper, on my phone, everywhere. And that's not the way to do it. And so I strongly urge you should do it. And that's rule number 2. Now, rule number 3 is one of the most important ones besides rule number 1 with having a lawyer. Rule number 3 is to say no to social workers. Say no to policemen. Do not let them in your home, either one. Your home is your castle, and it's your civil rights to not let people search your home. They have to have what's called a court order, a warrant, that specifically outlines what they can do and if they can come into your home. So, when you talk to a social worker, I did a mistake of inviting them into my home and to tell them everything. And that's the problem is I like to talk. And so that was a mistake. So you don't want to say anything because what you say will be used against you. Also, social workers want to come to your home to find more ammunition to use against you a lot of times. So one of the best ways that I did with my social workers for the first 5 years, I did let them in the home, is I talked to them out of their car at their trunk in the lights of the street. I wouldn't let them in my home. But I did tell them too much, I showed them there was allegations that my kids weren't in school. Well, I showed them their grade reports. I showed them the back to school nights, the office meetings with the teacher, the activities my kids were doing and stuff. They say we weren't paying the utility bills. I showed them all the utility bills being paid up, the water, the electricity, the gas, the rubbish. They were so adamant about that. And so for the first 5 years, I fought the social workers that way. Unfortunately, when I told you my parents were dying and they need to sell their belongings, that's when that got me into trouble because they called it neglect. They called it neglect. Also, you got to be careful. Not only will the social workers file things, code enforcement will, the fire department will, and the police will. In my case, the police filed a report that is similar to the social worker. Hi, Natalie. What would you like to talk about?
Bob, how are you?
Pretty good.
I think you were doing the right thing. Like, you were not letting him in the house, but you don't really have to show him any, like, paperwork about your kids.
No, I know that, Natalie. As I explained to him, is that see, one of the mistakes is I should have told him right away, hey, I need to talk to my attorney before I go much further.
Yes.
I'll get back to you. What that does, that gives you a timeout from the police, timeout from the social worker. So that does give a
Right.
timeout. So that's what you should do there. In your case, how were the kids taken from your home?
Well, this is what happened, and this is a real story. So my mom had passed away, but I was living in really our real family home, but they have different properties. But the point is that we were living in there and like close to UCLA in the mountains. So this neighbor, he was complaining about everything, but since he was mentally disabled, they took it for serious. But they never were able to get inside that house because it was fenced, it's gated. It's like, and they would. The story is that they would make up allegations, the social worker, without even getting into the house. I never let anybody in the house in the first place there. But what happened was when I got down to the other house here in Hollywood, the neighbors were getting even more nasty because they got jealous. There's a fellow down the street, he's jealous, and the next door neighbor isn't mentally right either. So they started calling in and everything. And my brother and I told them not to bring me here, but anyway, ended up here. And so they called the police, and then like the police kept banging on the door, and I thought they were really going to break the door down.
So you opened the door.
Yeah.
Now, when you opened the door, what did the police say to you?
Well, we're here because somebody said that the dog was loose, and that we have to check on the dog and stuff.
Well, did you think about going outside, not letting them in the house?
I went outside. I said, well, the dog is okay. The dog is fine. I actually had more than one dog. Okay, at the time they were my mom's dogs. I had like 4 dogs, and they were licensed from the county shelter. So I went out, and then what happened was I said, please. They kept opening the door. I said, please do not open the door because my kids they can run out of the house and get hurt in the street because the house is really close to the street. Okay. Not like the other house because this is kind of a new thing for them because they always even in the other house they could just walk out and they'd be in the front yard or the driveway, and the driveway is pretty huge. It's the size of this property here where I'm living in. So anyway, my poor kids, they're getting confused and everything. They're running out in it, and then the police. She was an Asian woman. She was nasty. She thought I was crazy, and she just immediately, and then they walked in around in the house. I didn't really let them in at all.
Okay.
I didn't let them at all. They were, and then they had a neighbor. He was here, and he was with the kids, and I had previously taken a shower for like 10 minutes, and he was with the kids and everything. Nothing happened, but with him, because he's like and they did. They took me to County LA Hospital for mentally ill people.
And they were thinking the
Meanwhile, I'm
police.
freaking out. My
Now the
house is
police are
open,
suddenly
and they have my keys.
and the police are suddenly thinking that they're clinical psychiatrists. Oh, that's terrible.
Right.
Hold on one second, Natalie. I need to catch up with Faye. She's written two important comments that I need to read to everybody. Faye said, "Do not let cops or social workers into your home without a warrant, or take your kids without it signed by a judge, an ECO." And I don't know what an ECO is in Richmond, Kentucky, but that probably is emergency.
Yeah, I agree with you, Faye. But the problem was that they were really gonna break in.
Yeah, it's hard, Faye, because we don't know these things. We know them now. Faye further says, there's no reasonable suspicion that a crime is being committed or that imminent risk or harm is not occurring, like children being beaten, or domestic violence occurring that the worker or officer witness. If none of that exists, they cannot take the kids without emergency change order, a custody order. An ECO is emergency custody order,
I see what you're saying.
signed by a judge. It's called a custody order. In Richmond, Kentucky, it is. Now in California, it's called a warrant, and it has to be signed by a judge. That his signature is a wet signature, and the emboss is shown through where the raised paper is. Furthermore, it has to say who it's addressed to, who it's addressed to, the both parents, and it has to tell you what children are involved and what allegations they are accusing you of. You got to know that ahead of time. Further, the warrant has to say what day and time they're going to enter your home. They also have to say where it's being located. They're going to enter your home. There's got to be specific instructions on the warrant. And then they got to tell you what they plan to do. Do you plan to interview the parents? Do you plan to talk to the children? Do they plan to take the children? That's all going to be spelled out on that warrant. Otherwise, the answer is no. The police or the social workers can't come in. Now, if there's imminent danger, they can come in. There are actually three ways that they can enter your home. One, if you give them permission. If you say it's okay to enter the home, they'll come in. If they have a warrant, they can enter your home. The third way is imminent danger. That means if a child's being hurt physically, if the child is in danger, like domestic violence is happening, people are losing emotions out of hand, there's fighting going on, they can enter the home. So those are the three ways. A warrant, or in Kentucky, emergency change order, a custody order, or in or you want to let them in. No, or you can, if you have extreme danger, like domestic violence or things like that.
I understand, but there's no extreme danger. They just came. It was really weird. Because I just was upset with my brother, and then because he left the other house not locked.
Well, if they come into your home, it's called illegal search and seizure. That's what it's called. So without that. So that emergency custody order.
They stole a bag of clothes from me too.
Yeah, I remember you telling me. I know you told me that. That's really bad there.
And then when I got to the other house, which is interesting because I had got released from the hospital, the whole house was, yes, my house was like yours,
Right.
But it's okay because that's the way she had it. And I understood.
Right.
But the thing is, they went into the drawers of the kitchen and stuff. They knocked my bookshelf.
Well, they're looking. They're searching because they don't have a strong case. Anytime they come into your home, they don't have a strong case. Anything they find will be used against you, and anything you say to them will be used against you. So anything you find will be used against you. So the rule is you don't let them in there unless there's a warrant or extreme danger. And the other way is
The
if you
only
give them
way they
permission.
could have gone in there was like when they had my keys. They must have jumped over the gate.
Yeah, well, your case was bad, and I'm sorry to hear that. Um,
I never got my keys back even.
Now,
I never did.
what did the keys go to?
I had the keys from my house and here, the two houses, okay?
Oh, there were door keys.
In West Hollywood, and
There
over
were
there,
door
close
keys.
to UCLA.
There were door keys, right?
Right, they're the house keys, yeah. They're on my neck. They took them.
Mm-hmm.
The police took my keys.
Well, maybe I know one thing. When police do arrests, they usually remove jewelry. In fact, police sometimes,
they took the bracelet. Yeah.
For instance, they also remove body piercing too. If you're arrested, they will remove your body piercing, and they're really mean about when they take off your body piercing.
But I don't have it on my.
Well, no, but I know a woman that was arrested, and she had piercings on her breasts, and they made a bloody mess removing them from her breasts. So I'm trying to tell you, the police don't care. They treat everybody like animals. And the police are animals because what's happened recently? In Gainesville, Florida, a sheriff killed a black man, an Air Force man who was 23 years old on May 3rd, shot point blank while he's on the phone with his FaceTime talking to his girlfriend. He was shot 5 times. Why did he have to do that? Why? It's all recorded on camera, and that policeman, it took the sheriff a whole week to fire that bad sheriff. I don't know why it took a whole week. And then just recently, a couple days ago, 2 white officers came into an apartment with this black woman, and they shot her in the face 3 times, or one of them did. Now, he has been fired immediately, and now he's been arrested for murder. Count 1 murder.
Yeah, they just went steal again, and they stole even more clothes in the other house. They had a bag of clothes in the kitchen too there. That's why I get upset, because these people, they were looking for stuff to steal.
Oh, police also plant evidence. They're not to be trusted. They're not to be trusted. Now, you should never talk to social workers or police. It should be only yes, no answers. You should never let them in your home. And you should never let them in your yard. Your yard should be secure. And you can put signs up, no trespassing.
Because what happened here is that people here are crazy. They have regulation, like this code enforcement. They just want to bother people, you know? But he couldn't get in. Even though if I had like tons of whatever in the back where the car is, because they had to cut the trees. He even ordered us to cut the tree. That's so ridiculous.
Wow.
You know, they just looking around to make problems.
Well,
don't let anybody in. You're right.
Yeah. Now, in Richmond, Kentucky, faces the police and the Department of the Children Bureau Services have railroaded my poor friend Sarah. And she's talking about a girl that had charged the police department with corruption, and they retaliated against her and arrested her of sexual charges with her children, which are not true.
God, that's horrible.
And now she sits in a jail awaiting court, and the penalty for that is 20 years. She's in her 40s. So by the time she gets out, she'll be 60 years old. That is terrible that the Madison police in Richmond, Kentucky have done that to a human being because they filed a grievance against the sheriff department. You have to be careful of retaliation. They want to do retaliation.
I don't want to do no retaliation. I just don't want to put my kids home and safe away from.
I'm not saying you do. Please do retaliation.
No, I'm just letting everyone know in general. Don't do
Yeah.
anything unless you're sure.
Well,
You
and
know?
also
Because they will
social
retaliate.
workers have retired. They stole my daughter. She was only
Yes,
12 at the time, and they did her in. That was wrong. That was wrong.
that is wrong.
Yeah.
They brainwashed my two daughters too, at 7 and 6.
Yep, I believe it. And then also, I want to further say that that at any time you feel uncomfortable, an easy way to take a timeout from the social workers or the police is say, hey, I need to speak to my attorney. You may not have one, but it's a stall tactic because before you go any further, they have to give you that opportunity. You're supposed to be represented by a lawyer at all proceedings. So if they're at your home, you technically can ask for an attorney. You can ask for an attorney.
You can ask for an attorney, especially when they're medically kidnapping your child.
Yeah, that's another thing you brought up, medical kidnapping. Now, medical kidnapping can be a scenario where a parent late at night, their kid has a high temperature, and they rush the child down to the emergency or urgent care. Now, what's happened is that there's child case workers that work at the hospital, and sometimes they'll end up taking your child from you because of what you say or what the doctor has found. So you got to be really careful. And when you go to the hospital, be heads up. Don't let them take your child. Also, if you're pregnant and having a baby and your time comes, they do the same thing. If they test the mother and she tests positive for drugs, they'll end up taking the child fresh out of her womb, which is wrong. You don't do that. You do not do that. So be careful of medical trafficking.
Medical trafficking, yes, because what they did to my first daughter is they blamed me for her sickness, and they said I wasn't mentally normal. That's what they did.
Yeah.
That's terrible. I never could imagine how could they do that, and then they were the ones neglecting her.
Well, 3. Now, rule number 4 is the one that you should research the internet about your case. There's so much information on the internet. It is the power that help you fight and win your case. You need to type in CPS, and then you need to type in the city and what you're looking for. Cases and things like that. You need to spend time. How do they take children? Also, Faye and I discussed a handbook or guidebooks. There's all these guidebooks and handbooks that certain states agencies have about how children are supposed to be processed. And so all you have to do is look up the handbooks or look up the guides. Kentucky has both a parent guide and a handbook. So it's very important. I know in California, I should have looked it up too, because you'll learn a lot. Education, rule number 4 is you spend at least 40 to 60 hours researching the CPS in your neighborhood, in your area that you live in, because you'll find things that will help you. You'll find things that help you. Now, Faye further says, yes, the police and department. Oh, that's where friend Sarah, right. We talked about that, Faye. We've talked about that. And not only does Kentucky require a warrant, they want an ECO, emergency custody order. And if they don't have this stuff, then you can fight. And if you're legally arrested, you can sue them.
Yeah, I could have sued them, but the thing is, the lawyer, they gave me one court-appointed attorney. He was an idiot. He wanted me to admit to something. But the judge that I had on the third day, the hearing, she wanted to actually make sure everything was okay. I think she wanted to release them back. But then they gave me this crazy judge after her.
Well, Faye further says during her case, they spent 3,000 hours doing research on her case. 3,000 hours.
That's great.
That's over 100 days they did research if they spent 30 hours a week. Oh, I'm sorry, Faye. Faye has spent 3,000 hours, over 100 days of doing 30 hours a week doing research. Faye did. Faye spent 3,000 hours and she couldn't get her kids back. And that's so sad, Faye.
I did a research on the manual, all that too. I still couldn't get it back, but I know that I can get the guardianship because I can try. I'm still looking into it. With so much paperwork, you have to go to probating to get them.
Yeah.
But,
Faye,
why,
Natalie, I like to let the phone number, if you wouldn't mind, drop off the call so that other people can call in.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you for spending time talking. And Faye, if you want to call in, you can call in, Faye. But I'd like to have another person talk because I have
They
about...
can't have double call, just one call, right?
Right, just one call, and I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
But if you guys, if Faye and you, Natalie, want to be a guest on my show, I can have two of you on my show.
Yeah, I don't know how the computer, how that works, really.
Well, my show producer will explain it to you. That's Grace.
Okay.
And she'll give you the link to StreamYard.
Okay.
Right now, Faye says she's going through probate now with trying to get her guardianship of her 23-year-old son. He's a special needs son. So thank you, Natalie, for calling in.
Thank you.
Right now, people, you can call in at 626.
Okay.
Bye-bye. 626 698 0990. And it's live. That's 626 698 0990. And you can call in. I'd be glad more to have you. So far, we've had Faye and Natalie talk about their cases and what's worked for them and there. So I'm open up to anybody of you. I have a lot of people in this room. So if anybody you want to text in comments, please do so. Call me if you want to call live on the phone or be a guest on the show. And so Natalie talked about her case. These are real people I have in this room. They're real parents, and they have really bad situations. I had a bad situation. I've been trying to help others. But you're going to find CPS is like you've fallen in the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland, and you're going from room to room, off with your head. It's a crazy place that CPS is. They're not your friend. As I told you, the pink ladies wore T-shirts that said they're professional child kidnappers. And on the back they put, "Do you know where your children are at?" Also, you got the social worker in Chicago, Illinois, that posted an ad on her Facebook from 1848, black children for sale. Or you got the pedophile social worker investigating that had a child alone with him, and he told her to remove her clothes so he could take pictures. Very sickening, very disgusting. My social worker did retaliation, forcing my daughter at 12 to divorce her family, her brothers and her parents and grandparents, etc., to change her name, to seal her birth certificate, and to be adopted in foster care. So I'm telling you, these social workers are not your friends. Now, I've had two social workers come in this room. I had Carol from Maryland, who had a clinical psychology degree and supposedly had 6 months of training from Maryland, and talked about for 40 minutes how CPS is done that she handles. Totally different than what I was hearing from the parents. Then I had another social worker last night named Kit from Iowa, who also worked in Illinois, that was a third-party social worker, meaning that she worked for the Child Protection Service, but she said that they are bad and they do it for money. These social workers are in it for the money part of things. I'm telling you, it's big dollars that these social workers want to go after. And they're really bad. And I'm sorry that if any of you had to experience that. So I've talked about 4 rules. I talked about how to get an attorney. I talked about how to do your notebook and organize your paperwork. I talked about how to say no and don't let them take your children. And that's true about the police or the social workers. I've also told you to research your area and try to find out everything you can about CPS in your area and how they operate. You need to know the enemy. CPS is not your friend. CPS is not your friend. And you need to know the enemy because they're going to make your life upside down and really hurt you to the point you cry. Faye, who grew up in social because her mom was really a bad mother, had a horrible time in 5 different times that she was in social. She was in foster care. It was bad. My kids were hurt in foster care. My kids were hurt in foster care. And so, okay, we're over the time. I'm going to end it early tonight for you all. I started early thinking the clock was a long time there. So I want to thank you all for listening. And God bless you all. Please keep fighting for your kids. And again, I apologize if I started early, but hopefully I reached as many as I could. It was a good night. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And remember to fight with your children, to fight to get them back. God bless you. And this is Bob Pace signing off.